A lonely and divorced millionaire, Edward Blackwood, became captivated and invited a wheelchair-using supermarket attendant, Clara Hastings, to his Christmas party, and everyone was surprised when, what happens when a lonely millionaire opens his heart to someone the world least expects? Will love break through the barriers of prejudice and transform everything? Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. In the quietude of a lavish home situated in the rolling hills of the English countryside, Edward sat alone in a grand study that echoed with the whispers of a life once filled with laughter and warmth. The opulence of the room, adorned with dark mahogany furniture and velvet drapes, contrasted sharply with the emptiness that enveloped him. It was a space designed for entertaining, yet it felt more like a gilded cage. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced aimlessly in the air, much like Edward's own thoughts, scattered and unfocused. At the age of 48, Edward was a successful businessman, a name that resonated in boardrooms and gala events, yet now, it held little meaning in the stillness of his solitude. The echoes of his recent divorce lingered like a haunting melody, one that he couldn't shake off, no matter how lavishly he decorated his life. He had once believed that wealth could shield him from heartache, but now, with the realization that he had lost his partner, his confidant, and a semblance of companionship, he grappled with the truth that money could not mend a broken heart. As he gazed out at the sprawling gardens, meticulously maintained yet devoid of life, Edward questioned the purpose of his riches. He had amassed a fortune through hard work and relentless ambition, but now, in the wake of his marriage's disintegration, he felt as if he had been collecting trophies for a game he no longer wanted to play. The laughter of friends and family had become a distant memory, replaced by the hollow sound of his own breathing. The vibrant holiday decorations that adorned the house felt like a mockery of his internal despair. Christmas was approaching, and instead of warmth, it brought forth a sense of dread and isolation. In stark contrast to Edward's muted existence, at a local supermarket bustling with holiday cheer, Clara navigated her world with a spirited determination that radiated from her very being. In her 30s, Clara had faced her own set of challenges, most notably the physical limitations imposed by a wheelchair. Yet, she had cultivated a resilience that empowered her to embrace life fully. Working as a supermarket attendant, she infused her interactions with humor and grace, engaging with customers in a way that made them feel seen and appreciated. Clara had dreams, vivid and colorful visions of a life brimming with love and adventure, yet often found herself feeling like a ghost in the bustling crowd. People would pass her by, their eyes glazing over her presence as if she were merely an obstacle in their path. She longed for deeper connections, for someone to notice her beyond the wheelchair. Despite the challenges she faced, Clara maintained an optimistic outlook, believing that love could blossom in the most unexpected corners of life. As the holiday season approached, Clara found herself enchanted by the spirit of Christmas that enveloped the supermarket. The shelves brimmed with festive products, twinkling lights adorned the aisles, and the scent of freshly baked goods wafted through the air. Despite the joy surrounding her, a flicker of loneliness brushed against her heart. She watched couples share tender moments, families laugh together, and friends exchange gifts, each encounter a reminder of the warmth she craved yet felt distant from. On one particularly brisk afternoon, a fateful encounter awaited both Edward and Clara. Edward, in a rare moment of needing to step outside the confines of his estate, decided to visit the local supermarket. He had put off the task of purchasing last-minute gifts, dreading the thought of mingling with the public, yet something compelled him to leave the solitude of his home. As he walked through the aisles, the vibrant decorations and cheerful atmosphere felt jarring against his internal melancholy. He pushed his cart slowly, his mind consumed with thoughts of what could have been, the echoes of laughter from his past haunting every corner of his mind. Clara was at the checkout, her bright smile lighting up the space. She greeted each customer with a genuine warmth that made them feel at ease, her laughter infectious even in the face of her challenges. When Edward approached her register, he was taken aback by her presence. There was something refreshingly authentic about Clara that caught him off guard. As he placed his items on the counter, Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that fleeting exchange, Edward felt a spark of connection. Clara noticed him, not as a wealthy businessman draped in the trappings of success, but as a man burdened with an unspoken sorrow. She recognized the loneliness that clung to him, the way his shoulders seemed to carry the weight of the world. In that moment, something shifted within Edward. It was as if the air had thickened with unexpressed feelings, and for the first time in a long while, he felt seen. Clara's warmth was disarming, and it ignited a curiosity within him that he hadn't felt in years. As he moved to pay, Edward found himself lingering, drawn to the way Clara engaged with her work and the customers. There was a lightness in her spirit, a defiance against the circumstances that life had dealt her. It was a stark contrast to his own existence, and for reasons he couldn't fully comprehend, he felt compelled to know more about her. After completing his transaction, Edward hesitated for a moment at the threshold of the exit, his heart racing with an unfamiliar excitement. He glanced back at Clara, who was busy assisting the next customer, her laughter ringing out like a melody in the otherwise mundane atmosphere of the supermarket. The thought of leaving without saying anything felt like a missed opportunity, an echo of the countless chances he had let slip by in life. As he stepped out into the chilly air, a sudden wave of longing washed over him. He found himself pondering the possibilities of connection, of warmth and authenticity that had eluded him for so long. Clara was a beacon of light in his otherwise darkened world, and he felt an inexplicable urge to reach out, to bridge the chasm that separated their lives. Unbeknownst to him, Clara felt the weight of that encounter too. As she finished her shift, she replayed the moment in her mind. How his presence, though tinged with sadness, had stirred something within her. It was a small connection, yet it felt monumental, a reminder that amidst the chaos of life, there existed the potential for genuine interactions that could alter the course of one's journey. In the days that followed, both Edward and Clara found themselves reflecting on that brief moment at the supermarket, their lives quietly intertwining in ways they had yet to understand. Edward, haunted by his loneliness, began to contemplate the possibility of inviting Clara into his world, a world he had long kept at arm's length. Meanwhile, Clara nurtured a flicker of hope, a belief that perhaps love was not as far-fetched as it seemed. As Christmas approached, the air crackled with anticipation, and the streets became adorned with festive lights. The world outside continued its bustling rhythm, while Edward and Clara remained on the precipice of change, each navigating their own lives with a newfound sense of possibility. The journey ahead was uncertain, yet the connection they had ignited promised to blossom in ways neither could have anticipated, setting the stage for a remarkable intertwining of their paths. As the days grew shorter and the nights colder, the anticipation of Christmas hung in the air like the scent of pine and cinnamon. Edward found himself lost in thought, his mind drifting back to the brief encounter he had had with Clara at the supermarket. Her laughter, warm and infectious, seemed to resonate with him long after their meeting. The way she spoke, the spark in her eyes, and her unapologetic spirit captivated him. It was a stark contrast to the sterile environment of his high society life, which felt increasingly hollow. The opulence that surrounded him in his lavish home felt burdensome, a gilded cage that served more as a reminder of his solitude than a source of joy. Clara, the spirited supermarket attendant who navigated the aisles with a grace that belied her wheelchair, had ignited a flicker of hope within Edward. He could hardly believe that he, a man accustomed to the company of polished elites, could feel such a connection to someone like her. It was this burgeoning realization that compelled him to take a leap of faith, to reach beyond the confines of his extravagant but lonely existence. The idea of inviting her to his Christmas party began as a mere thought, but it quickly transformed into an obsession. Edward spent hours contemplating the implications of such an invitation, weighing the potential reactions of his friends and family against the desire to share a moment of genuine joy with Clara. The decision to send the invitation was not made lightly. Edward understood the shock it would evoke among his social circle, a group that thrived on exclusivity and status. He could already envision the raised eyebrows, the hushed whispers, and the disapproving glances that would accompany Clara's presence at his gathering. Yet, Something deep within him yearned to defy those expectations. The thought of Clara, with her vibrant spirit and refreshing perspective, brought a sense of warmth that felt foreign yet deeply comforting. When the invitation was finally pinned and dispatched, Edward felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. He imagined Clara's reaction. Would she feel honored, or would she doubt her place in his world? The thought gnawed at him, but he quickly brushed it aside. He had done what he felt was right, and now he could only wait. Meanwhile, the holiday season unfolded around him, with the city adorned in twinkling lights and festive decorations. Clara, on the other hand, was in for a whirlwind of emotions when the invitation arrived. It was beautifully embossed, a reflection of the elegance that Edward embodied. As she held the delicate card in her hands, disbelief washed over her. The invitation felt surreal, a glimpse into a world so far removed from her daily life at the supermarket. Doubt crept in, wrapping around her heart like a vine. She wondered if she truly belonged in Edward's world, a world filled with wealth and privilege that had always felt foreign to her. Her mind raced with possibilities and scenarios. What would she wear? How would she fit in? The nagging voice of insecurity whispered that she would be an outsider, a curiosity to Edward's affluent friends. Clara had always been a fighter, but this invitation stirred up a tempest of self-doubt that momentarily clouded her spirit. Yet, amidst the anxiety, the flicker of excitement sparked within her. This was an opportunity, an invitation to step outside her comfort zone and experience something magical. Encouraged by her close friend, who had always believed in her potential, Clara decided to accept the invitation. The prospect of attending Edward's party ignited a sense of adventure within her. She imagined the twinkling lights, the laughter, and the joy that filled the air during the holidays. It was a chance to embrace the spirit of Christmas in a way she had never contemplated before. As the evening of the party approached, Clara prepared herself with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. She meticulously chose her outfit, selecting a deep green dress that complemented her complexion and accentuated her confidence. It was a color she had always loved, evoking images of holly and evergreen. Clara carefully styled her hair, adding a touch of sparkle with a delicate hairpin that caught the light. With each passing moment, she could feel the excitement building within her, a blend of hope and apprehension. On the night of the party, the grand estate where Edward lived was aglow with lights, casting a warm and inviting aura that spilled onto the street. Clara arrived, her heart racing as she approached the entrance. The sound of laughter and music wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of roasted chestnuts and mulled wine. As she entered, she was greeted by the sight of elegantly dressed guests, each more polished than the last. Clara felt a rush of uncertainty wash over her, but she was determined to find her place in this world, if only for a night. Edward was waiting for her, a vision of grace and charm. The moment their eyes met, a sense of comfort enveloped them both. He welcomed her with an openness that dispelled her insecurities, momentarily easing the tension that had coiled in her stomach. Clara felt as though she had stepped into a storybook, a world where magic existed, if only for a fleeting moment. As they moved deeper into the party, Clara found herself drawn into conversations that flowed effortlessly between them. The warmth of their connection stood in stark contrast to the glances of curiosity and skepticism that flickered among the other guests. Whispers floated through the air, some bemused and others outright disapproving. Edward's friends, accustomed to a certain standard of companionship, were taken aback by his choice to invite Clara. Yet, as they shared stories and laughter, the atmosphere around them shifted. Clara's spirit shone brightly, illuminating the space between them, and for a moment, it felt as if the world beyond the party faded away. As the night progressed, Clara and Edward found solace in each other's company, exchanging tales that revealed their vulnerabilities and dreams. They laughed freely, oblivious to the judgmental eyes that lingered nearby. Edward felt liberated, finally able to be himself without the weight of expectation pressing down on him. Clara, in turn, felt seen, not just as a woman in a wheelchair, but as an individual with hopes, dreams, and a heart full of love. In that enchanting moment, surrounded by twinkling lights and the spirit of the season, Clara and Edward forged a connection that transcended societal norms. It was a connection rooted in authenticity, an understanding that each had experienced their own struggles and triumphs. And as they leaned closer, sharing whispered secrets and dreams, they found themselves enveloped in a world that felt both unfamiliar and profoundly right. The evening continued to unfold, marked by laughter, shared stories, and the undeniable chemistry that sparked between them. Clara realized that she was not merely an outsider in Edward's world. She was becoming a part of it, a vibrant thread woven into the fabric of his life. Edward, too, recognized that Clara was more than just an unexpected guest. She was a beacon of light, a reminder that love and connection could flourish in the most unexpected places. As the night wore on, the party buzzed with excitement, but for Clara and Edward, time seemed to stand still. In that crowded room filled with laughter and chatter, they had created their own sanctuary, a place where they could simply be themselves, free from judgment and expectation. It was a fleeting moment in a world that could often feel isolating, yet it was also a reminder of the profound connections that could emerge when one dared to step outside the boundaries of convention. In the heart of winter, amidst the festive cheer, Clara and Edward discovered the true magic of the season. A magic that had the power to bridge divides, heal wounds, and create a love that defied societal norms. And as the night drew to a close, they knew that this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge their perceptions of love and connection in ways they had never imagined. As the evening deepened, the atmosphere in Edward's grand ballroom transformed into a tapestry of laughter and music. Guests mingled in clusters, their voices a symphony of idle chatter and clinking glasses. Underneath the glittering chandeliers, the warm glow of candlelight accentuated the rich colors of the decor, creating an enchanting ambience. Edward and Clara stood at the edge of the dance floor, surrounded by a sea of elegantly dressed couples swaying in rhythm to the soft melodies wafting through the air. Clara, in her shimmering gown that hugged her form beautifully, felt a surge of confidence as Edward extended his hand towards her. She accepted his invitation to dance, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and nervousness. As they moved together, Edward's presence enveloped her like a warm embrace. His touch was gentle yet firm, guiding her across the polished floor. They danced gracefully, lost in the moment, their laughter blending with the music. Clara's wheelchair glided effortlessly, and Edward adapted his movements to ensure she felt included, their chemistry palpable. As they twirled and spun, Clara caught glimpses of the guests' reactions. Eyes widened, whispers exchanged. The shock was evident among Edward's friends and family. It was as if they were witnessing a scene from a fairy tale, an unlikely pairing that defied their preconceived notions. But in that moment, Clara and Edward were oblivious to the judgmental glances, completely absorbed in each other's presence. With every step, Clara felt herself opening up to Edward in ways she had never expected. He drew out her stories, her dreams, and her fears, creating a safe space where vulnerability felt natural. The music shifted to a slower tempo, and Edward pulled Clara closer, their bodies swaying gently. In the intimacy of the moment, Clara shared snippets of her life, the challenges she faced, the triumphs of her spirit. Edward listened intently, his gaze unwavering, as if he were absorbing every word she spoke. It was a stark contrast to the superficial conversations he often endured within his elitist social circle. With Clara, he found solace in her authenticity, a refreshing divergence from the endless discussions of business and status. As Clara opened her heart, Edward, in turn, revealed the burdens he carried. He spoke of the loneliness that had haunted him since his divorce, the emptiness that wealth could not fill. Clara's presence was like a beacon of hope, illuminating the shadows he had grown accustomed to. He realized that, for the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a businessman or a millionaire, but as a man yearning for connection. Yet, just as the warmth of their connection blossomed, the ambience of the evening shifted. The grand doors of the ballroom swung open with a decisive creak, disrupting the enchanting atmosphere. All heads turned as Victoria, Edward's former wife, made her entrance. Her presence was commanding. She glided into the room with an air of sophistication, her designer gown trailing elegantly behind her. The guests murmured in surprise, and Edward's face fell, a flicker of unease crossing his features. Victoria's eyes quickly scanned the room, landing on Edward and Clara. A sly smile crept across her lips, one that spoke volumes of her intentions. She approached the couple with a practiced grace, but the tension in the air was palpable. Clara felt her heart race, an instinctual sense of foreboding washing over her. It was as if the warmth of the evening had been abruptly doused by a cold wind, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable. With a few deliberate steps, Victoria stood before them, her gaze piercing. Clara could sense the subtle undertone of hostility masked beneath Victoria's polished demeanor. While Clara had been reveling in the newfound connection with Edward, the arrival of his ex-wife cast a long shadow over the evening. Victoria's presence carried with it the weight of their shared history, a reminder of the life Edward had built before Clara entered the picture. The two women exchanged glances, a silent battle of wills unfolding. Clara felt a knot form in her stomach as Victoria wasted no time in making her presence felt. With each passing moment, Victoria unleashed a series of veiled, condescending remarks aimed at Clara. They were thinly veiled criticisms that hinted at Clara's worthiness, or lack thereof, in Edward's world. Clara could feel the sting of insecurity creeping in, each word from Victoria like a sharp jab to her confidence. Edward looked between the two of them, his expression a mix of frustration and concern. He sensed Clara's discomfort rising and wanted to interject, to defend her against the venomous words of his past. But he also knew that challenging Victoria in public could escalate the situation, drawing unwanted attention to Clara. The delicate balance of the evening began to unravel, and Clara's earlier joy started to slip through her fingers like sand. Feeling overwhelmed, Clara excused herself from the conversation, her heart heavy with the weight of Victoria's scorn. She maneuvered her wheelchair towards the grand doors, needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere of judgment and disdain. The crisp winter air welcomed her as she stepped outside, the coolness refreshing against her flushed cheeks. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the turmoil within her. The stars twinkled above, a stark contrast to the chaos she had just left behind. Edward, having noticed Clara's abrupt departure, felt a sense of urgency course through him. He excused himself from Victoria, who smirked with satisfaction at having disrupted their evening. He quickly made his way outside, where Clara sat alone, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The soft glow of the party lights illuminated her face, revealing the hurt etched in her features. Approaching her, Edward knelt down beside Clara, his heart aching at the sight of her distress. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, wanting to choose his words carefully. He reached out, placing his hand over hers, a gesture meant to convey his understanding and support. In that instant, he wished to erase the negativity Victoria had cast over their evening and reassure Clara of her worth. Clara looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Edward felt a rush of protectiveness surge within him, a fierce desire to shield her from the hurtful words that had struck her so deeply. He spoke softly, expressing his admiration for her strength and resilience. He wanted her to know that she was not defined by the opinions of others, especially not by someone like Victoria, who thrived on belittling those around her. In that quiet moment under the vast night sky, their bond deepened. Clara felt the weight of Victoria's comments start to lift as Edward's words enveloped her like a warm blanket. She realized that she was not alone in this battle against societal judgment. Edward's unwavering support ignited a flicker of hope within her, a belief that perhaps love could transcend the barriers that others tried to impose upon them. As they sat in comfortable silence, the world around them faded away. Clara and Edward forged an unspoken connection, a promise that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead together. The night, once marred by tension, transformed into a canvas of possibility, filled with the potential of a love that was genuine and true. With renewed determination, Clara leaned into Edward, ready to embrace the evening once more, hand in hand, heart to heart. In the weeks following the extravagant Christmas party, Edward and Clara found themselves navigating a new chapter in their lives, one that blossomed amidst the backdrop of a city shimmering with winter lights. Their connection deepened as they explored the bustling streets of London together, the air crisp with the promises of new beginnings and uncharted territories. Edward, ever the attentive guide, introduced Clara to his world of luxury, yet he was careful to ensure that they remained anchored in their mutual reality, one built on shared experiences rather than material excess. They would wander through the cobblestone streets of Covent Garden, where the aroma of roasted chestnuts mingled with the laughter of street performers. Clara, with her wheelchair effortlessly maneuvering over the uneven stones, felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in a long time. Edward watched her, his heart swelling with admiration as her eyes sparkled with childlike wonder. He pointed out the intricacies of the local shops, each window displaying an array of holiday decorations that seemed to dance in harmony with the festive atmosphere. Clara found herself enchanted not by the luxury around her, but by the genuine interest Edward showed in her thoughts and feelings. He asked about her favorite places, her dreams, and the little things that brought her joy. She spoke of her love for art, recounting how she used to paint vibrant canvases filled with colors that echoed her spirit. Edward listened intently, his focus unwavering, as if her words were the most precious jewels in his collection. In return, Clara opened the door to her world, sharing stories of her childhood, the challenges she faced, and the moments of triumph that defined her resilience. But the couple was not without their challenges. As they ventured further into Edward's affluent social circle, Clara felt the weight of judgment resting heavily on her shoulders. Invitations to exclusive events arrived, and each one came with an unspoken expectation that Clara would navigate the complexities of Edward's world with the grace of a seasoned socialite. She found herself at a lavish gallery opening, surrounded by art enthusiasts who discussed pieces in hushed tones, their laughter echoing through the expansive space. Clara remained close to Edward, her heart racing as she sensed the subtle glances directed her way, some curious, others skeptical. Edward noticed the tension that coiled around Clara, a palpable anxiety that shimmered in her eyes. He felt a surge of protectiveness, aware that the whispers behind their backs could easily fracture the fragile bond they had cultivated. He steered the conversation toward lighter topics, engaging friends in discussions about the art while subtly redirecting attention away from Clara. Yet, he could not shield her entirely from the barbs of disapproval that lingered like shadows in the corner of the room. In the privacy of Edward's opulent home, Clara often confided in him, her voice tinged with vulnerability. She expressed her fears about fitting into his world, the gnawing anxiety that she would always be viewed through a lens of pity or curiosity. Edward listened, his heart aching for her. He admired her strength, but could see the cracks that formed when she compared herself to the women who glided effortlessly among his peers. He wanted to assure her that her worth was not tied to societal expectations, but the words often escaped him, caught in a web of his own insecurities. Despite the challenges, moments of pure joy punctuated their days. They ventured to art galleries where Clara's passion for painting was reignited. Edward arranged for her to take a workshop with a renowned artist, and she found solace in the strokes of paint beneath her fingers, each color a reflection of her soul. Edward watched her transform, her spirit lifting as she lost herself in creativity. She would often return home with canvases filled with vibrant hues, and they would spend evenings discussing art, life, and dreams, their laughter echoing through the halls. As winter deepened, the city transformed into a magical wonderland. Edward invited Clara to join him for ice skating at a picturesque rink in the heart of the city. Clara felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The thought of gliding across the ice was exhilarating, but the fear of being judged by others loomed large in her mind. Edward, sensing her hesitation, assured her that they would make it a fun adventure, one that celebrated their unique bond rather than the societal expectations surrounding them. On the day of their outing, Clara arrived at the rink bundled in a cozy scarf and a warm coat, her breath visible in the cold air. Edward greeted her with a radiant smile, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. As they approached the rink, Clara's heart raced, a blend of anticipation and anxiety swirling within her. Edward, ever the gentleman, offered his hand, guiding her to the edge of the ice. With a gentle nudge, he encouraged her to try, and the moment she rolled onto the ice, a sense of liberation washed over her. They glided together, Clara navigating the ice with Edward's help, laughter bubbling forth as she stumbled and regained her balance. The world around them faded, the cheers of onlookers becoming a distant echo. With each glide, Clara's insecurities began to melt away, replaced by a joy that illuminated her face. Edward, too, felt a surge of happiness as he witnessed Clara's transformation, her laughter ringing like music against the backdrop of swirling snowflakes. However, the specter of judgment was never far behind. After their skating adventure, they decided to warm up at a nearby cafe. As they settled into a cozy corner, Clara felt the familiar weight of scrutiny as other patrons cast curious glances their way. She could almost hear the whispers. Some were kind, while others dripped with skepticism. Edward sensed her discomfort and reached across the table, his hand gently covering hers. In that simple gesture, Clara found a moment of solace, a reminder that their connection transcended the opinions of others. But with each passing day, the pressure grew. Clara began to withdraw into herself, her insecurities morphing into a quiet storm. Edward noticed the change. The spark in Clara's eyes dimmed, and her laughter became less frequent. He tried to engage her in conversations, to draw her out of the shadows cast by societal expectations, but she seemed distant, lost in a world of self-doubt. The vibrant woman he had come to cherish was slipping away, and Edward felt helpless in the face of her internal struggle. One evening, as they walked along the Thames, the city lights reflecting off the water, Clara stopped abruptly, her expression a mixture of frustration and sadness. She turned to Edward, her voice trembling as she expressed her fear of inadequacy, the sense that she would never truly belong in his world. Edward felt a pang of sorrow, realizing the weight of the expectations that had begun to suffocate their relationship. He wanted to assure her that her strength was what drew him to her, that his affection was not rooted in her ability to fit into a mold but in her authenticity. As they continued their walk, Clara's vulnerability hung heavy in the air. Edward tried to bridge the gap between them, sharing stories of his own struggles with societal pressures and the expectations placed upon him. He spoke of his own insecurities, revealing the loneliness that had permeated his life before Clara entered it. In that moment of openness, Clara saw a glimpse of the man who had captured her heart, someone who understood the complexities of human connection and the weight of judgment. Yet, as the weeks progressed, the shadows of doubt continued to loom over Clara, a persistent reminder of the barriers that separated them. Edward, determined to support her, sought ways to integrate their worlds further, hoping to dissolve the walls that had begun to form between them. He invited Clara to join him for a charity gala, a chance for her to meet some of his closest friends in a more relaxed setting. Clara hesitated, her heart heavy with trepidation, but Edward's reassuring presence urged her to step out of her comfort zone. As they prepared for the gala, Clara found herself staring at her reflection in the mirror, dressed in a beautiful gown that Edward had helped her choose. The fabric hugged her in all the right places, and for a fleeting moment, she felt beautiful. But the flutter of excitement was quickly replaced by doubt as she recalled the judgment she had faced in the past. She took a deep breath, trying to quell the storm of anxiety raging within her, reminding herself that Edward saw her not just as a woman in a wheelchair, but as the vibrant person she truly was. On the night of the gala, Clara arrived at the venue, her heart racing as she clutched Edward's hand for support. The opulent ballroom was filled with elegantly dressed guests, laughter and music swirling around them like a warm embrace. Edward introduced Clara to friends and acquaintances, his pride evident in the way he spoke of her. Clara felt a mixture of admiration and dread. The warmth of Edward's words was a balm to her insecurities, yet the weight of judgment still loomed. As the evening unfolded, Clara navigated through conversations, her laughter mingling with the music. Edward stayed close, offering words of encouragement and grounding her amidst the swirling crowd. Yet, as the night progressed, Clara could feel the eyes of others on her, the whispers simmering just beneath the surface. She tried to push through, engaging in conversations, but the fear of being an outsider began to creep in, threatening to overshadow the joy of the evening. In the midst of the festivities, Clara caught sight of a group of women, their laughter ringing out like crystal chimes. She recognized them as some of Edward's closest friends, their polished appearances a stark contrast to her own insecurities. They whispered and glanced her way, and Clara felt her heart sink. She could almost hear the unspoken judgments forming in their minds, and the weight of their scrutiny pressed down on her like a heavy cloak. As the night wore on, Edward's laughter filled the air, but Clara felt increasingly detached, her smile faltering as the atmosphere in Edward's expansive home had shifted dramatically since the party. What had begun as an enchanting whirlwind of laughter and connection with Clara had turned into a tumultuous storm of doubt and insecurity. Rumors, like insidious vines, crept through Edward's social circle, wrapping tightly around the fragile foundation of their budding relationship. Whispers insinuated that Clara was merely a gold digger, drawn to Edward's wealth rather than his heart. Clara, who had always fought against being seen as less than or defined solely by her wheelchair, found herself ensnared in the web of judgment that surrounded Edward. The thought that those around him could perceive her in such a shallow light was devastating. She had faced her share of prejudice in life, but this felt different. It struck at the core of her worth and the authenticity of their connection. With every passing day, the weight of the rumors hung heavier in the air, suffocating the joy that had once blossomed between them. In her small apartment, Clara found herself drifting into a sea of uncertainty. She gazed out of her window, watching the world bustle by, filled with people who seemed so carefree, so unburdened by the complexities of relationships. She recalled the way Edward had looked at her during the party, the warmth in his eyes that had made her feel seen and valued. But the whispers had sown seeds of doubt. Could he truly feel that way? Or was she just a fleeting distraction? A novelty to be cast aside when the novelty wore off? As the days passed, Clara distanced herself from Edward. She stopped returning his calls, letting them go to voicemail, her heart aching with every missed connection. Each message from him was a reminder of the bond they had begun to forge, yet the fear of being misunderstood held her captive. She wanted to believe in Edward's feelings for her, to trust that he saw her for who she truly was, but the fear of being hurt again loomed large. Edward, on the other hand, felt lost without Clara. Days turned into weeks, and his once vibrant world dimmed in her absence. He wandered through his lavish home, surrounded by opulence that felt hollow without her laughter echoing within its walls. He missed the way she challenged him, the way her spirit lit up even the most mundane moments. He tried to convince himself that he could be patient, that Clara would eventually come around, but the silence stretched endlessly, amplifying his anxiety. Determined to mend the rift, Edward reached out to their mutual friends, seeking insight into what had transpired. He learned about the rumors, their origins steeped in jealousy and misunderstanding, and his heart sank. How could they perceive Clara in such a light? It ignited a fire within him, a protective instinct that threatened to consume him. He knew he had to confront the situation head-on, to fight for the woman who had unknowingly captured his heart. One crisp afternoon, Edward made his way to the picturesque park where they had shared so many laughs and quiet moments. The park was a sanctuary, a place where the chaotic world outside faded away, leaving only the beauty of nature and their connection. He hoped that Clara would be there, that she would be willing to meet him. With each step, his heart raced, a mixture of hope and fear coursing through him. Clara, seated on a bench beneath the sprawling branches of an oak tree, had chosen this spot for its tranquility. She watched the leaves dance in the gentle breeze, lost in thought. The vibrant colors of autumn surrounded her, yet the world felt muted and gray in her heart. The anticipation of facing Edward again was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had spent so much time avoiding the confrontation, fearful that it would unravel everything she had come to cherish. When Edward approached, the sight of him sent a rush of emotions flooding through her. There was an undeniable magnetism between them, an unspoken understanding that had been forged in the fires of vulnerability. Yet, the shadows of doubt still clung to her. She could see the concern etched on his face as he drew nearer, and for a moment, time stood still. As they sat together, The silence between them felt heavy, laden with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Edward began to express his deep concern for her well-being, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. He spoke of the rumors, the hurtful comments that had reached her, and how they had cut him deeply. Clara listened, her heart racing, torn between wanting to believe in his sincerity and the lingering doubts that threatened to overwhelm her. In that moment of vulnerability, Clara found the courage to voice her fears. She spoke of the pain that came with being judged, of the weight of societal expectations that often felt insurmountable. She confessed how the rumors had seeped into her mind, tainting the beautiful moments they had shared. Each word that escaped her lips was a release, a cathartic expression of everything she had bottled up inside. Edward listened intently, his heart aching for the woman before him. He reached for her hand, a gesture of solidarity and understanding. He wanted to assure her that she was more than the perceptions of those around them, more than a rumor or a stereotype. He spoke of his feelings for her, of the way she had transformed his life, filling it with color and warmth. In that exchange, they began to peel back the layers of doubt that had built up between them, revealing the raw, vulnerable truth of their connection. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the park, Clara and Edward found themselves enveloped in a cocoon of understanding. They shared their hopes, dreams, and fears, recognizing that while the world around them might not always be accepting, their love could stand firm against the tide of prejudice and judgment. In that magical moment, they rediscovered the bond that had drawn them together in the first place. Edward's unwavering support and Clara's fierce spirit merged, creating a powerful alliance against the challenges they faced. The park, once a place of uncertainty, transformed into a sanctuary of hope and possibility, where love bloomed amid adversity. They sat together, hands intertwined, watching the leaves rustle in the breeze. The shadows of doubt began to dissipate, replaced by the warmth of connection and understanding. Together, they would navigate the complexities of their relationship, ready to face whatever the world threw their way. In that moment, they both knew that love, in its purest form, could triumph over societal expectations, and together, they were ready to embrace the journey ahead. As the charity event unfolded, the lavish hall was adorned with twinkling lights and elegant decorations, each detail meticulously arranged to reflect the affluence of Edward's world. Guests mingled, their laughter and chatter creating a symphony of voices that echoed through the grand space. However, amidst the festive atmosphere, Clara felt a tightening in her chest, a mix of anxiety and anticipation. She had come to support Edward, yet a lingering doubt gnawed at her insides, whispering that she didn't quite belong in this glittering realm. Clara sat at a beautifully set table, the rich burgundy tablecloth contrasting sharply with the delicate china. The clinking of glasses and soft strains of a classical ensemble filled the air, but Clara's mind was elsewhere, replaying the recent events that had led her here. The rumor that she was after Edward's wealth had cut deep, and though Edward had defended her, she still felt the weight of judgment from those around them. The whispers and sidelong glances had become unbearable, and she often found herself retreating into the background, a mere observer of the life she desperately wanted to be a part of. Just when she thought she might slip away unnoticed, a figure emerged from the crowd, commanding attention with an air of authority. Clara's heart skipped as she recognized her former boss, Mr. Harrison, a man known for his integrity and keen sense of justice. He had always been a steadfast ally during her time at the supermarket, advocating for her when others turned a blind eye to the prejudice she faced. Clara watched, a mix of hope and apprehension swirling within her, as he made his way to the microphone at the front of the room. The chatter hushed as Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, his expression serious yet determined. He began to speak, his voice resonating with conviction. He praised the charity's mission and the importance of supporting those in need, but it was his next words that sent a ripple through the audience. He spoke of Clara, sharing anecdotes of her resilience and strength, recounting the many times she had faced adversity with grace and humor. He painted a picture of a woman who had fought against the odds, not someone looking to exploit the kindness of others. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she listened, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. She had never imagined that someone would stand up for her in such a public forum, especially within Edward's elite social circle. The guests shifted in their seats, their expressions a blend of surprise and contemplation. Mr. Harrison's words cut through the barriers of prejudice, forcing the crowd to reconsider their assumptions. Edward stood beside Clara, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, offering silent support as the man he respected spoke out for the woman he loved. The warmth of his touch grounded her, reminding her that she was not alone in this moment. As Mr. Harrison continued, he highlighted Clara's unwavering dedication to her job and her community, emphasizing the character and integrity that defined her. Clara felt a wave of emotion wash over her. It was a validation she had longed for, a recognition of her worth beyond the confines of her wheelchair. With each word, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The initial skepticism that had permeated the air began to dissolve as guests exchanged glances and whispered among themselves. Clara's heart raced as she noticed some of the more affluent attendees nodding in agreement, their expressions softening as they reconsidered their previous judgments. Edward's love for Clara was becoming undeniable, and the truth of her character was being unveiled in a way that could not be dismissed. As the speech drew to a close, Mr. Harrison turned to Edward, acknowledging him with a nod. The implication was clear. Edward had chosen a partner of substance, someone who challenged the status quo and embodied resilience. The applause that erupted was thunderous, reverberating through the hall as Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. For the first time, she felt seen, truly seen, in a way that transcended her physical limitations. In that moment, Edward squeezed her shoulder, a silent promise that he would stand by her side no matter the opinions of others. The crowd began to embrace Clara, moving closer, introducing themselves with genuine warmth. Clara felt the weight of isolation lift as she exchanged smiles and handshakes, sensing a shift in the collective consciousness of the group. They were beginning to understand that love could flourish in unexpected places, challenging their preconceived notions of status and worth. As the evening progressed, Clara found herself enveloped in a newfound sense of belonging. Conversations flowed effortlessly as guests shared stories of their own struggles and triumphs, each tale echoing the themes of resilience and compassion. Edward remained by her side, his presence a constant source of strength and encouragement. Together, they navigated the evening, their laughter mingling with the sounds of celebration. However, the night took an unexpected turn when Victoria, Edward's former wife, strode into the venue, her demeanor strikingly different from the rest of the guests. Her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the room, landing on Clara and Edward with a look of disdain. Clara's heart sank, her previous buoyancy momentarily overshadowed by the return of the woman who had made her feel so small. Victoria's arrival sent a ripple of tension through the crowd, the air thickening with unspoken words. She approached with an air of entitlement, her presence commanding attention. Clara braced herself, knowing that Victoria's reputation for manipulation and superiority preceded her. As she drew closer, Clara could sense the hostility radiating from her, a stark contrast to the acceptance she had just experienced. Mr. Harrison, sensing the shift in energy, stepped forward, his posture protective as he addressed Victoria directly. Clara held her breath, unsure of what would unfold. Victoria attempted to dismiss Clara with a wave of her hand, her voice dripping with condescension as she made her intentions clear. She would not allow Clara to tarnish Edward's reputation, but Edward, emboldened by the support Clara had received, stepped forward, his expression resolute. He defended Clara with a fierce passion, asserting that she was not a threat, but a remarkable woman who had enriched his life in ways he had never expected. As he spoke, the crowd rallied behind him, their support palpable. Clara's heart soared, the swell of love and acceptance overwhelming her as she realized that this was not just a battle for her worth, but a declaration of their love in the face of adversity. Victoria's facade began to crack as the crowd's reaction shifted from curiosity to solidarity. She could feel the tide turning against her, the whispers now tinged with disapproval of her manipulative behavior. Edward's friends, once her allies, were beginning to see through the veneer of her charm. In that moment, it became clear that the power dynamics had shifted. She was no longer in control. As the confrontation reached its climax, Clara felt a mix of triumph and relief. She had fought for her place in Edward's life, and now, with his unwavering support and the validation from others, she felt invincible. The weight of societal expectations began to dissipate, replaced by the buoyancy of acceptance and love. In the midst of the chaos, Edward turned to Clara, his eyes filled with warmth and admiration. He leaned in, capturing her lips in a passionate kiss that ignited a spark of hope and promise. The crowd erupted in applause, celebrating not just their love, but the triumph of authenticity over pretense. Clara felt the world fade away as she savored the moment, knowing that they had emerged stronger than ever, fortified by the support of those who had once doubted them. As the evening drew to a close, Clara and Edward stood hand in hand, surrounded by newfound friends and allies. They had defied the odds, proving that love could conquer societal barriers and prejudices. The future stretched out before them, filled with endless possibilities and adventures waiting to be embraced. Clara, once a woman burdened by doubt and insecurity, now stood tall, her heart brimming with hope, ready to embark on this new chapter of their lives together.